For a decade, I was the family's designated disappointment. The narrative was set in stone at a tense Thanksgiving dinner 10 years prior, when I, a fresh-faced college graduate with a degree in finance, announced I was declining a lucrative offer from a prestigious investment firm. Instead, I told my stunned family I was going to pursue a project. I saw it as a vision. They saw it as an alarming, nebulous delusion. My father's face, usually a mask of stoic composure, had flushed with a mixture of anger and profound confusion. My mother's eyes had welled with tears of worry, her hand instinctively reaching for her husband's arm. My older brother, Mark, a successful surgeon, had simply chuckled and shaken his head, the sound of perfect condescension that encapsulated their collective verdict. I was throwing my life away on a foolish fantasy. That dinner became the foundational myth of my failure, a story retold with a sigh at every subsequent family gathering, a cautionary tale for younger cousins about the perils of not having a real plan. The development of my life post that Thanksgiving was a study in quiet, determined isolation. I moved into a small, sparse apartment in a less fashionable part of the city, a fact my mother bemoaned every time she visited, her eyes taking in the second-hand furniture and the single laptop on a folding table that constituted my entire office. To them, my existence confirmed their worst fears. I dressed in thrift store clothes, drove a 20-year-old car that coughed and sputtered, and consistently declined invitations to expensive restaurants or vacations, citing a lack of funds. Their offers of help, from loans to getting me a proper job at Mark's friend's company, were well-intentioned but laced with pity, and I politely refused them all. What they couldn't see were the 16-hour days spent in that cramped apartment. While they imagined I was sleeping or wasting time, I was building. My project was a niche software solution for optimizing micro-investments, a complex algorithm that could find patterns and opportunities invisible to the human eye. The first 5 years were a brutal marathon of coding, testing, failing, and restarting. I lived on a shoestring budget, pouring every spare cent into server costs and legal fees. The loneliness was a constant companion, but it was preferable to the weight of their skeptical stares. I attended family events like a ghost, enduring the patronizing questions about when I would get back on track, and the well-meaning but crushing advice about settling for a stable job. I became the family's charity case, the recipient of overly generous birthday checks and hand-me-downs from Mark, all of which I secretly deposited into my business account, a silent investment they never knew they were making. The culmination arrived on a perfectly ordinary Sunday, the day of my parents' 40th wedding anniversary party. The house was filled with the familiar hum of familial judgment, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and expensive perfume. I arrived late, as usual, in my ancient car, wearing my one passable suit that was visibly outdated. The party was in full swing, a showcase of my family's achieved milestones. Mark's stories of a recent medical conference in Geneva, my cousins discussing their new beach houses, my aunts and uncles comparing retirement portfolios. I lingered on the periphery, a ghost at the feast of their success. My mother, flustered and happy, asked me to run upstairs to her bedroom to fetch her reading glasses from her nightstand. As I entered the room, I saw my father and brother already there, looking for the extra bottles of wine stored in the closet. On the nightstand, next to my mother's glasses, lay a familiar, crumpled piece of paper. It was a bank statement from my personal account, which I must have accidentally left in my old jacket after my last visit. My father, thinking it was his, had picked it up. His face was ashen, his hand trembling slightly. He wasn't holding a statement of a failure. He was holding a document that showed a balance with more zeros than he had ever seen in his life outside of a corporate annual report. The line items showed transfers from my company, which had been acquired in a massive, quiet deal 6 months prior. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the distant laughter from the party below. Mark peered over his shoulder, his surgeon's eyes quickly scanning the numbers, his own confidence evaporating into pure, unadulterated shock. They weren't looking at a statement of poverty. They were looking at the undeniable, numerical proof of a success so vast it rendered their entire worldview of me obsolete. The resolution did not involve a grand speech or a triumphant reveal. There was only the deafening silence of that bedroom, the crumpled paper in my father's hand serving as the only necessary testimony. We descended back to the party, the three of us wrapped in a shared, profound quietude that was utterly alien to us. The energy around me shifted palpably. The pats on the back became hesitant, the questions about my life ceased to be condescending and became tinged with a new, wary respect. The laughter that had once followed me now seemed to die whenever I approached a group. Later that evening, my father sought me out on the back porch. He didn't apologize, and I didn't need him to. He simply stood beside me, looking out at the garden, and finally said, "You never needed saving, did you?" I shook my head. The weight of a decade lifted, not with a bang, but with a quiet, shared understanding. I wasn't their charity case anymore. I was just his son, who had taken a path he could never have imagined and had walked it entirely alone until a piece of paper did all the talking for him. The family narrative didn't so much rewrite itself as it simply shattered, leaving in its place a hesitant, newfound respect and the silent acknowledgement that failure, like success, is often just a matter of perspective.